an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people going to be from your background are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's the stole wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle. Thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast, live streaming to you on Rumble. Rumble.com/AmRadPod is where you can find us. And if you do find us, make sure that you smash the like button and follow the channel. You want to subscribe. That goes directly to support this program. We appreciate it. If you listen to the audio format of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, iHearts, any of the sort, do subscribe there so you can get the automatic episode updates when we drop them on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. You can probably tell I'm a little bit of a rush because we have so much to get to today. I've got a whole host of stories because Garrett and I have been eating a steady diet of black pills and sharing them upon you. And we've noticed from the views that it is not working. So we're going to try something different, maybe a little bit of positivity today. The show is called What We're Aiming For, but perhaps a more appropriate one was throw us a freaking bone here, guys. So there's some good news here, not earth-shattering, but some things moving in the positive direction. And we want to highlight those and discuss them because it's Thursday morning. Let's feel good. Let's go into this day feeling really good. I know Garrett wants to feel good. He's tired of me blackbilling him. Let's get him on here and get started at GOB Actuals, where you find him on the socials. Good to see you today.
I don't know that I am tired of the black pills, Steve. As you can tell, I'm wearing my black pill ops is what I'm going to call it from now on, hat and shirt. But yeah, we'll see. It seems like there's no shortage of black pills out there, but there's also some silver lining on occasion. So we shall see.
Well, I want to base this off of a libertarian article, and it's not going to really pertain to anything that we're going to discuss as far as the latest revelations, good things happening. But I think it will sort of set us on the course because, again, it's not earth-shattering. It's not like you woke up one day and it's a panacea. We live in utopia. We are back in the garden. Not so much, but we're not asking for that much. And I thought that this sort of set it out there where this guy is a libertarian. He has his ideal environment that he wants to live in. But then he wrote this and said, I'm not asking for that much. It's Jacob Hornberger, who was actually a presidential candidate this term and the prior term for the Libertarian Party, and won the primaries for the Libertarians in 2020. And then they replaced him at the convention with Jo Jorgensen. And she promptly went out there and said BLM is a good thing. So the Libertarian Party nationally gets what it deserves. His article is called What We're Aiming For. One thing is certain, whether Americans elect Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, who, side note, Jacob Hornberger is not really going to be in favor because he's a dyed-in-the-wool libertarian, it won't matter one whit in terms of achieving a free society. That's because both of them will continue the welfare, warfare state, regulated, managed economy way of life that needs to be dismantled if we are going to achieve a genuinely free society. But then he kind of curbs back a little bit. And he looks to a time in American history. He says, it wasn't perfect, but it should be something that we should aspire to get back to. And the type of America that Jacob likes is 1880 to 1910. So if you're really interested in Grover Cleveland and William McKinley era, this is for you. But he is also honest about it. First, the bad from that era, Garrett. Tariffs, violations of women's rights, Chinese Exclusion Act, which was the first immigration control because he's an open borders libertarian, the Sherman Antitrust Act, subsidies for railroads, so that's ongoing, compulsory school attendance in only one state, which he decries, but it was only one state, Massachusetts, and the Spanish American War. So it wasn't like they didn't have a war going on. But now for the good. And this is what we're aiming for: no income taxes or IRS,
I like that.
no Social Security,
Even
no
better.
Medicare or Medicaid, no welfare of any kind, no minimum wage laws, no Pentagon, CIA, NSA, FBI, no foreign military bases, no paper money. They still had gold standard, no Federal Reserve, no government school except for Massachusetts, and no gun control.
Wow.
All of a sudden, Howard Taft era doesn't sound that bad.
It sounds pretty great, actually. Can we where's Doc Brown when you need him in his DeLorean? Because that sounds awesome. I mean, I'm just taking that in because, like, I don't know 1880s history, but man, you had me at no IRS, but the list just kept getting better and better and better and better. And he- sorry, Steve, it's black pill esque, but how do you get back to that? Because what does government do? Government is a beast. It's a monster that only exists to further government. And I don't see us peeling back the layers, the thick layers of government bureaucracy anytime soon, regardless of who the president is.
Because success in the bureaucracy is in growth, and you have these entrenched policies, and they have their own. We talked about fiefdoms. They have their own fiefdom, their own program that they're in charge of. They don't want to change it. They want to keep it the same. They want to expand it. So the only way that other people can make a way for themselves is to come up with something new. And there's nothing closer to immortality than a new government program, as we've been discussing at length here. One final statement from Jacobs before we get into some of the good news that is out there. Not great news, but good news. It's also worth noting that it was the most prosperous society in history between 1880 and 1910. Real wage rates more than doubled during that period, and many people went from rags to riches during that period of time. It's also worth mentioning that it was the most charitable nation in history as a result of that prosperity,
And
because
now it's
Americans
just
are good.
yeah, and now it's just forced charity. The government will take it from you under threat of force and then use it for whatever they want.
So, again, the theme is we're not going to let good be the enemy of perfect today. Some good things. Now, I want to also say that I think the good things happening are maybe a paring back of the bad. So maybe getting us back to normal shouldn't be something that we're waving the pom poms over. We should just be like, all right, I turned into a 400-pound man and now I'm back to my original weight. Do I really deserve the credit for making no progress on that? I mean, I'm not winning Mr. Olympia. I'm just the same weight that I was before I became the 400-pound man. So maybe that's a little bit closer to a better descriptor here. But the first one that I found a couple weeks ago, we learned that DEI program at Microsoft is getting laid off. An email says that the team was eliminated because of changing business needs as of July 1st. Many technology companies, including Microsoft, made commitments to improve DEI after the George Floyd riots in 2020. Microsoft pledged to invest $150 million into its DEI push.
It's a lot of money.
It involved doubling the number of Black and Hispanic leaders by 2025. You don't just hire someone as a leader, by the way, which would mean that you'd be hiring a lot of people and then grooming them up the chain of command, or you just hire one, and then no matter what, they can do no wrong. I don't know what Microsoft deems to be more appropriate. But despite those commitments, many tech companies have appeared to retreat somewhat from DEI. Zoom laid off a DEI-focused team earlier this year. Bloomberg reported. Google and Meta also cut DEI programs last year. So a little bit of sanity. Maybe the reality of the economy is smacking them in the face, though, because these are sort of the efforts of a first world country or a first world corporation. Like if you're not having to wonder about clean water, then you can do things like navel gaze and contemplate philosophy. I think it's probably similar in the business climate as we are now in this cycle of inflation, and it seems to be on track to get worse.
Yeah, I wonder what's driving this. I think the economy has got to be one factor because all of these businesses you listed, Microsoft, Zoom, whatever else, they're what's their goal? Their bottom line is the goal. They exist to make profit. Most of them, I imagine, are publicly traded, so they want to keep their shareholders happy. But it's interesting to me because when you look at the political landscape that we're in right now, one side, or maybe it's just the loudest 10% on that side. That doesn't seem to ring true to me. It seems like the vast majority of one side is all in. It's all or nothing on the DEI and LGBTQ plus cult, and then the other side seems to be inching closer and closer. Like they're, it seems to me because just look at recent history. RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, basically on board with the Trump campaign now, and Tulsi Gabbard ran for president as a Democrat. She was a congresswoman for Hawaii as a Democrat. She wants to severely, or wanted to, I don't know if she's changed her position on this, wanted to severely infringe upon the Second Amendment. RFK Jr., I really like some of his stances, but he's pro infanticide. And so it's seen, and even some things Donald Trump has said recently. The one that's coming to mind for me that really stood out because we've been kind of harping on the First Amendment again lately is he said he wants to make a law to make it illegal to burn the American flag. And it's like, well, you don't understand the First Amendment. And like, that's not moderate. That's not conservative. That's just government tyranny. That's what that type of law would be. So it's interesting that these companies are kind of peeling back from this DEI culture, and it seems like they're not even doing it quietly. Like it's coming out. I know what is it? Is it Robbie Starbuck who's kind of been exposing a lot of these companies like
He just got
Harley?
Lowe's the other day.
Yeah.
Preemptively. He's just like, hey, I'm coming for you. All right. We surrender. They're like the French.
Yes. And what's interesting about that too, though, is like, why are they kind of running scared from somebody like him when they have the whole woke mafia on their side, allegedly? So I don't know. It's a curious thing to see that instead of leaning into it more, kind of like what we experience in the government, the government is pushing these things far more, but now these public companies are kind of peeling it back, which I don't know. Maybe they realize like, hey, merit actually does matter more, and uh, whether you're black or Hispanic or white, if you don't have the capabilities and the qualities we're looking for, well, sorry, it has nothing to do with your skin color or your sex. I don't know. It's curious.
I got to get your movie reference in for the day, right? Ghostbusters. I can't go to the private sector. They expect results.
Yeah.
And parenthetically on that flag burning law, I remember hearing years ago, Orrin Hatch, who was like 1,000 years old senator from Utah, was on record as saying if he was ever in some sort of like tight election, he would propose a flag banning amendment because he knew it would actually get out the base to support that, even though it wouldn't be enough to pass it. So it was a election, pretty cynical electoral strategy to do.
Yeah.
I ideologically, I don't know. I have never been and never expect to be in close proximity to Donald Trump. I would like to hear him articulate the case for how that's allowable in our system of government that he purports to love very much and want to lead. But maybe he's just getting the same advisors that were on Orrin Hatch because he's not around anymore. Let's move on to another good news. And here's another thing you'll say. You mentioned Robbie Starbuck. A lot of these are cultural. They're not pertaining to changing the systems of government. And I think that that's worth noting because you can do that uh, far easier in the private sector because they expect results, right? You can actually impact their bottom line, where there are these entrenched forces within government that are going to require a lot bigger lift. But this is like getting in shape for the marathon. You can't just jump off the couch and run 26.2 miles. Let's do a couch to 5K sort of program first, get our muscles up to speed before we take on the big behemoth. And there's nowhere better to go than the next one, which is the university campuses, the Satan's Youth Ministries for 18 to 22-year-olds, right? This one comes from Catholic Vote, and it is about the University of Kentucky. They announced the closure of their DEI office. University of Kentucky is a public institution, so that's actually impacting on the government. They're quasi-government, right? I mean, I guess it's always funny to me that the football coach or the basketball coach is the highest paid state employee at all these
Yeah.
all these states. It's just a laugh line.
Unless you don't get the COVID-19 vaccine, like the coach at, was it Washington University back then? He said, I'm not getting it. And they fired him. He had a hefty salary too.
Man. Well, now they're just getting paid by boosters, which is why I don't watch the college sports anymore. All right. University of Kentucky is closing its diversity, inclusion, and equity, which is funny because it's actually die. That's the way that they did it. So well done, Kentucky.
That's how it should be.
They're closing it amid concerns that lawmakers around the country about the role of the office at public universities. So there are some people within government saying that this has no place in the government. An email the university president sent to staff members additionally announced that the university will remove diversity statements from hiring documents and will not mandate diversity training, which to me is awesome. That's a major impact because there is that chilling factor that it does have. You sit down and they're looking for the one person that rolls their eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now we're going to target you. Don't you dare.
I mean, it was 2 diversity trainings a couple years ago in the FBI. Now I'm reliably told it's 3. 3 per year that you must perform in order to bend the knee to the appropriate regime. And that has no signs of wavering. I'm sure it'll be 30 at some point soon. I mean, it'll be part of their 3 hours a week for wellness. It'll be in lieu of meditating in the Newark field offices, lawn chairs that they have in front of signage that says it's okay to take breaks. You can participate in finding out how it's Native American and Alaskan Island Appreciation Day.
Yes, I remember getting those emails. It's like, what? And then you had, I think in my office, it was an agent who kind of was like running that part of the field office, and it's like, this is what you spend your time doing. But do you remember? I think it's along the lines of the good news is when Trump was president. I don't know if it was an executive order or what, but do you remember the FBI was like, all right, we're done doing this because the president said so. And then we went a couple years without getting those emails. But then Joe Biden was elevated to the position of power. And
it's almost as if that person was told to sit in the corner and wait for 4 years.
Just wait it out.
I mean, and the length of these emails for folks to understand, these would take you, I mean, an average person of above average of average level intelligence, it might take you an hour or 2 to write this email. They were very long and nobody was reading through them other than the person that wrote them and the others that probably proofread it. But these are government workers. I would wager a healthy amount that they would take a week plus to draft the email, particularly as it pertained to anything diversity, because they wanted to be so over the top on it.
Mm-hmm. They had to be, because we're the government and you'll do what we say, even if you work for us. There we go to our compelled speech issue from the other day again, too.
Well, we mentioned Robbie Starbuck, who's just doing yeoman's work. And I believe one of the companies he went after was Jack Daniels. Mm-hmm. And he keeps going after these companies that are perceived to be right-wing, their consumers, right? Like John Deere and Tractor Supply Company and Lowe's. I actually know a guy who works for Tractor Supply Company at one of their stores. He just manages one of their stores. He's not in any sort of executive position. And he said when that started that he was getting calls to the store from like angry people. He was like, press 1 for lawn care and press 2 for complaining about our woke policies. I was like, you should have recorded that because that would
Yeah.
have been fun.
It is interesting too that, well, one, it's good that he's going after those companies. They got to be the first target because, well, if you go for a place like Target, I mean, they're probably not going to reverse course. But for these companies, it's that hubris that we talk about a lot too. They have that same type of hubris where they're like, yeah, we know our customer base leans conservative. Screw them. We're going to do this anyways. And now they're like, oh crap, actually, maybe we better rethink this.
It's the African warlord that's forcing the 8-year-old to shoot the AK-47 into his mother's head. You are compelled to participate because then you're just easier. You've been softened up at that point, or you're identified as someone who needs to be purged because you rolled your eyes during the mandatory DEI training. But
Yeah.
to this story, it comes from Fox News about Jack Daniels. Among the policies that they're going to be renouncing are ending participation in the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index social credit system. So we talk about social credit systems for people like they have in China that that our elites want to have for individuals here in this country. There are those that exist for corporations along the lines of ESG, where they're trying to get really high on this index. And that way they don't get complained on and get bad press, and they will push forward agendas. It's basically a way to launder Marxism through the private sector. No more executive plus employee bonuses goals tied to DEI. It's just going to
Good.
be tied to performance, the
Oh,
private sector where they expect results.
go figure.
An end to quantitative workforce and supplier diversity ambitions. Do
What
you
does
want
that
to
even
try
mean?
to interpret that?
Is that like I'm thinking like promotions and positions of authority or other type of power in the company need to be, you know, wokenized or whatever.
I think you need to be intersectional enough. You need to be a certain pigmentation or like to engage in sexual activities with people who share your genitalia as far as being hired and then elevated, and then also supplier. So that would be a mandate of we only buy our supplies from businesses if those people are gay or a minority race,
Yeah,
which
good
is
good luck with
crazy.
that. Getting your I don't know, barley or whatever grains are used for their different concoctions.
Hops. I'm sorry. You're not a wheelchair-bound little person from Alaska who's gay, so we can't buy your hops.
Yeah, like who do you think is farming that stuff? Like, and I would imagine that Jack Daniels has probably like long-standing agreements with particular farmers. I, I mean, it says Kentucky bourbon whiskey on the bottle, so does that just mean it's made there, or are you getting all your grains and whatnot for your mash there too? I would imagine it's in that same area, and I think we talked about Kentucky recently, didn't we? Don't they have a Democrat governor?
Andy Bashir is their governor. He's like royalty in that state. His father or somebody else was governor before that, but this is also the state that elected Rand Paul
Yeah,
and Mitch McConnell.
yeah,
So it's a grab bag state.
for sure. And I would say, in large part, I mean, I guess I kind of think of Kentucky as the South, but most states in that area are relatively conservative, or you definitely have your conservative contingencies there. And I don't know. I live in Wisconsin. That's where I'm from. And although in years past, farmers often heavily voted Democrat, it was because they were single issue voters because of subsidies, like you mentioned, from the William Taft era for the railroad. Well, farmers get massive subsidies too. So dairy farmers, and there's some corn up here and some other stuff too. If they're getting subsidized, that's how they're voting because it helps them personally. I think there might be somewhat of a change to that because farmers, by and large, if you've ever met a farmer, I mean, you ever go to your state fair, or when you were in Iowa, have you ever gone to your state fair? Like, these aren't purple haired, uh, limp wristed, staring up, thinking about how they can be more woke the next day. They're getting to work at 5 in the morning, and they're working till the sun up to sundown, literally still. And that's not easy work. And for whatever reason, when you work hard, by and large, it seems like you tend to have a worldview that is a little more realistic. Maybe not always conservative, but certainly kind of bends that way, at least in my experience.
The county fairs are fun. I mean, we lived in Iowa, so we were going to the county fairs. The 4-H, the kids were showing off
Hmm.
their ewes and their pigs. The one style choice that was there every year that I always kind of just shook my head, it just didn't make sense, was the leather holster for the Leatherman that all the farmers have. I
They
don't
got to have
understand
that
what
thing
that
at the
is.
ready.
But they were fun. Love to take the kids to those. Enjoyed them every summer during all 6 weeks of summer that we have in the Midwest. And Kentucky's kind of, I guess, Appalachia hillbilly country, right? They were part of the Union in the Civil War, so it's a little bit of a tweener state. But let's go to something that's probably going to make you pretty happy, Garrett, being a First Amendment enthusiast and someone who likes to read his Bible very much. And that is the next story here that comes from the Daily Signal. Court rules in favor of Christian teacher forced to use trans pronouns. And we talked about this on the last episode of this individual that came from Wisconsin, your neck of the woods. But this guy comes from Ohio. Now, federal court ruled that the Ohio school district violated his First Amendment rights. His Vivian Garrity resigned as an English teacher in 2022 after being told to use a student's preferred pronouns. According to district court judge, the Jackson local school district, quote, compelled Garrity to use the student's preferred names and pronouns. In doing so, it forced the teacher to utter what was not in her mind about a question of political and religious significance. Common sense. Wouldn't you agree?
Man, that is some good news, Steve, and shocking actually, because based on even just some of the stories we've covered recently, like you wouldn't have expected this. I certainly wouldn't have, and yeah, it's crazy. My mind is a bit blown, to be honest, because, well, one, as we've covered down on quite a bit regarding the First Amendment, well, and we just did the other day, is the government cannot force you. So you have a teacher, which even historically, if you think of Christians, they're in, you name it, you name the field of work, you're bound to find a Christian in it. Farming, we just talked about, teaching, the stories about, or even look at biblical examples. And I think it ties in here because teaching by and large these days is in government school. But take like a like Daniel or King David or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or a whole list of Bible characters that you can incorporate here. They were Christian. They were in pagan government, which I would say is what we have today. We have pagan government, and they still were able to practice their beliefs. Granted, okay, I'm going to just put a pin in it because I'm going to be going on a diatribe now about Nebuchadnezzar and the fiery furnace. But my point is that reasonableness should rule the day. And when you have a guiding document like we have in the Constitution, a judge should be able to look at any given case, whether it's a Christian or a Muslim, or because take other religions, they aren't for this LGBTQ plus stuff either. Like if you're in Iran and you're claiming that, they're going to throw you off the top of a building, like, or saw your head off. Where here it's, hey, I just don't want to use your pronouns because of my beliefs. And for it to even have to go to court, because the administrator of the school should realize, like, oh, I'm part of the government, I can't do that, I can't compel the teacher to use pronouns, or whatever the case may have been. But at least there's some judges around still who have that reasonableness factor, and they're saying, we still live in America, last I checked, so Christian teacher, we're ruling in your favor.
The fact that it does go to court, I think, indicates how dug in the other side is. They said, no, we're going to go to court and we're going to fight this, instead of taking a moment and thinking, oh yeah, you know what? You do have that right. I mean, the left loves to talk about common sense gun control, which is just, we just want to take all the guns. That's, the same vocabulary, just a different dictionary. But this seems like common sense speech control, which should be not.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a common sense thing. It's not on the fringe, right? It's not. Is that really a call to violence? Is that a way that he was manipulating someone and actually causing them harm? That is doing backflips and turning yourself into a pretzel to say, if you don't call him or her, then that causes him harm or her harm or her harm. I don't know, but it's stupid, and common sense won there. So I'm
Yeah.
glad Ohio actually went there, and that sets a precedent for the other case in Wisconsin because they should follow suit there.
Yeah, they should. What's crazy about this too is like that is their line of thinking. It's, well, if you don't use the pronoun that they want you to use, then it causes them harm. Okay, well, what if me as a Christian then says,
Endangers my immortal soul.
yeah, like yes, because I know it's wrong, because my God tells me it's wrong, not just my God, the God of the whole universe says it's wrong. So then don't I have an argument there to say, well, him wanting me to use his preferred pronoun when he's not a she, that harms me. So there's a little duality here. Is there not, judge or anybody making these decisions? But no, it's just, say the line and do what we want and use the pronouns or else.
Well, my pronouns are I am right. So let's take a time off here, exhale from all the good news because it's just overwhelming, and thank our sponsor today. That's going to be the Prepper Beef Company. Guys, go to amradbeef.com. Amradbeef.com is where you go. That's our proprietary section of the Prepper Beef Company. And when you do, you can find out everything they have there. This is freeze-dried steak, high quality. There's nothing lab grown. There's no jabs into it. It's just steer from Texas. I know one of the owners of the company. He's a really good guy, prior military. He actually arranged for us to have an additional discount for you because Amrad Beef would have gotten you 15%, but now it's going to get you 20 if you use the promo code morning20. Morning20 gets you 20% off everything site wide. Could just be a single bag of high quality steak. Could be a subscription service. And if you do the subscription, you actually get more added onto it, and that'll get you a 30% discount. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. Go to ambradbeef.com. Use the promo code morning20. Now, we've talked about this woman before and in this context before, and there has been an update. Letitia James, the Attorney
Oh.
General of the great state, or formerly great state of New York, had some comeuppance. A court ruled against her. Court stops New York Attorney General Letitia James' effort to silence crisis pregnancy centers on progesterone. Isn't that how you say it? Progesterone?
That's right.
And that's the abortion reversal drug.
Mhm.
Now, the contention from the Attorney General was that it was basically false advertising, even though these crisis pregnancy centers were saying it's not 100% effective. Here's the actual data on it. It's whatever percentage effective. But she still went after them for false advertising. Well, a U.S. District Court in Western District of New York issued an injunction against the AG, barring her from taking action against crisis pregnancy centers discussing progesterone, the drug intended to reverse the effects of the abortion pill.
A proper Freudian slip there, Steve. Because
Yes, it was. Good call. The lawsuit is a response to legal action taken by Letitia James against 11 pro-life pregnancy centers in New York. The AG alleges that the organizations are giving false and misleading information about the treatment, and they are not. They've been honest the whole time, no guarantees. They're just providing an alternative view to what Letitia James wants, which is all the babies murdered. And I'm sorry, but Letitia James is extremely ambitious. She wanted to run for governor. I think that that deal was struck. I don't know if anybody remembers this or if you follow the political situation going on in New York. I have the misfortune of actually paying attention to some of this stuff. And Kathy Hochul was the replacement for Andrew Cuomo. She hadn't won the election. She'd actually gotten the lieutenant governorship in the same way, too. The prior person had some sexual malfeasance. So she was just promoting up because of other guys couldn't keep it in their pants. So Kathy Hochul gets made into the governor, and Letitia James becomes the attorney general, which is the catbird seat in that state to become the governor. There's so many of them that become the governor, and basically promised, I'm going to go after Donald Trump, and was going to use that to springboard herself into the governor's mansion. And she declared her candidacy for governor. And then a deal was struck. She withdrew from the race. Kathy Hochul winds up getting back and getting elected. So I'm waiting to see if Letitia James gets, I don't know, a Senate seat because Chuck Schumer keels over. But I bring that all up. She's really ambitious. She has no children. She has no family. And murdering all the babies is her way of saying, if I can't be happy, none of you will, because equity, right?
Hmm. Man, there's so much here actually just swirling around in my head because it ties into a lot of topics we talk about frequently. Well, one, it goes back again to compelled speech, and it goes back again to mis, dis, and mal information, where the government will decide what is accurate and true, and we're going to suppress your right to say it. That's what they're doing to these pregnancy crisis, or that's what they tried to do to these pregnancy crisis centers here, where the pregnancy crisis centers are putting out information and saying, "Hey, even if you had whatever treatments to murder your baby, and you have second thoughts because you realize the gravity of the murder that you're now participating in, um, we can do our best to stop that and reverse that." And Heidi's actually told me about this a little bit because of her volunteer work at the one of the pregnancy crisis centers here. So in her training to kind of onboard her and what her role was going to be, she's learning about some of this stuff. And I don't think either of us had ever heard of it. It was before we covered this story the first time, and I remember just being amazed at like the wonder of that, and think, what is progesterone? It's a hormone that only women have. Like men, and I won't get too far into the weeds, but primarily men have testosterone. That's it. That's our hormone. Women have progesterone, testosterone, and drawing a blank. There's big three.
Estrogen.
Estrogen. There it is. The main the main one for women. And yes, there are some other more minor hormones, but those are the differentiating factors. When you have an XX chromosome or an XY chromosome, your hormone makeup is different as well. But for me, like, I look at the wonderment of God and how He made us and how He made men and women different, and part of that is progesterone. And now look, it even has the properties intrinsically made into it to even reverse some type of medical evil to try to murder a baby. It says, God says, no, 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 no. I still have the power to do all things, and just take a little bit extra doses of the hormone that your body already makes, and it can help you reverse this evil that you were about to do. Like you said, not always successful, but good. And this is the other piece I wanted to bring up about this story is, it's easy to say, it's ceded territory. I'm guilty of that. I said it. I say it myself frequently. California is ceded territory. New York, ceded territory. Hell, half the time Wisconsin, I think, is ceded territory. This type of ruling kind of goes to show, well, another piece is, you said there were 11 of these centers. So maybe not all these territories are fully ceded. And part of it too also goes back to kind of like a Romans 1. Like Letitia James, it seems clear right now, is a Romans 1 woman. She has that debased mind. Like you said, she's doesn't have a husband, doesn't have any children. She's focused on the career. She's bought Satan's lies for what her life should be. I'm not I, I'm really not going to hold out a ton of hope that she's going to reverse course, but I pray that she does, because what an even more powerful testament something like that would be, is to be like, hey, I was wrong about all this. Now, in my humanness, I'm going to say that's probably not going to happen. And she's going to remain with that debased mind and seek her Senate seat or congressional appointment, or maybe next, once Kathy Hochul's like, okay, I've had enough, I want to be governor again. Your turn, Letitia, you're in. Um, She'll probably continue down that course. But even in a story, like, once you start peeling back the layers a little bit, there's often a lot more here. And hopefully for people in New York, or maybe even any of us who are kind of thinking we live in ceded territory, not always the case. And there's still some judges in positions where they say, no, no, government, you can't do that. You can't force them to say what you want, when you want, how you want.
It's a different mentality that we've talked about before in a law enforcement context, in a criminal justice system context, of the fair process that Bill Shipley speaks so well about. And he articulated to me in a different way that I think really resonated even better than the fair process. And he said that there's a fundamental misunderstanding of being a good prosecutor. You present the facts. If you lose, that's not on you. It's just that the facts did not support a conviction, right?
Mhm.
And Letitia James went and presented the facts that these crisis pregnancy centers are doing false advertising. The facts don't support that. And she should just walk away and say, oh, okay, well, then I had a wrong interpretation. Now I kind of share your sentiment. I think that she'll try a new and novel way to go back after them because she was interested in an outcome, not in the pursuit of justice. But now we're veering off into the negative. Let's stay positive, Garrett. Let's go back to Satan's Youth Ministries for Adults. And this one is from the University of Illinois, another ceded territory, right?
I'm surrounded, man. Minnesota, Illinois.
The College Fix reports the University of Illinois has 42 illegal race and sex-based scholarships, according to this federal complaint. The Equal Protection Project of the Legal Insurrection Foundation filed the complaint with the Office for Civil Rights within the Department of Education. So according to this complaint, 19 scholarships that discriminate on the basis of sex, 19 scholarships discriminate on the basis of race, and another 4 discriminate on the basis of race and sex. The public university is now reviewing the scholarships due to, quote, legal developments. So they're going to go Jack Daniels on this one, I think, and it's just not worth the fight. Let's just pull them back. Now, to be a little bit more realistic, they'll probably just wink and nod at the applicants and make sure that they get to where they really wanted. But you never know. Maybe this is clawing back to some semblance of normalcy. This is not progress in the light of these scholarships should be issued solely on the issue of merit. They're not fighting for that. They're just wanting the scholarships to not be issued solely on the issue of your genitalia or the pigment in your skin.
Yeah. What was the name of the group? Equal Protection, what? Something?
The Equal Protection Project,
Equal
which is
Protection
part of the Legal Insurrection Foundation.
Okay. Interesting names, but as soon as you said that, I was like, "Oh, yeah, equal protection clause. Duh. No wonder these are the ones who are kind of picking this up." And wouldn't you know it, everybody, back to a constitutional argument for why these uh, scholarships are illegal is because we already have equal protection, and we mentioned it earlier with the story out of the University of Kentucky. Is there a quasi government institution because our public, quote unquote, public universities, they get massive amounts of funding from the government, so you're beholden to. So this is what it is in America. The government cannot violate your rights. Okay, so that's how it works. Like if you go into Walmart and I don't know, they tell you to leave for whatever reason, and you say, "Oh, you're violating my rights." Nope, that's not how it works. That's not how constitutional protections work. Only the government can violate them. So when you have an institution that is massively funded by the government, they cannot violate your constitutional rights. Typically speaking, there's could be some nuance there, which we won't go into, but the Equal Protection Clause, which was ratified with the 14th Amendment, and then through case law and other things we've talked about before, maybe we'll go deeper on this someday, but it basically was enumerated. So the 14th Amendment forced the states to provide equal protection to every citizen. And then through case law, the Equal Protection Clause was enumerated through the 5th Amendment to also provide that same type of equal protection. Look, I'm not just making this stuff up. I have a lot of background in this, but you can also just look it up yourself. Just look up Equal Protection Clause and you'll find, maybe different, probably smarter sounding verbiage for what I'm telling you. But this is already the case. It's been long standing in this country that you have equal protection regardless. You're a citizen here. You're a person here. Doesn't matter your sex, your age, your race. You already have it. You already have equal protection. You're supposed to. So when an institution says, "Oh, we're going to give scholarships based off of race, based off of sex," then you're clearly, in these 42 cases, crossing the line, and now the government is violating the Constitution, essentially, is what's happening.
I have one that I definitely want to get to because I don't want to run out of time without getting to it. It involves the First Amendment and actually seeing some justice happen here. And I know that you will be excited to get to that. So it was a little further along the line of my queue, but I'm going to bump it to the front. And this one comes from Fox News. And it's your old stopping grounds there.
Kansas, yeah.
Kansas raid tied to 98-year-old's death in First Amendment showdown to result in criminal charges.
Whoa.
You have to hear the background for this story.
Yeah, because you don't see that very often.
Joan Meyer, her name, 98-year-old co-owner of the Marion County Record, died the day after police knocked on her door with an improperly obtained search warrant. She had appeared on home security video demanding officers get out. Man, she was a pistol, wasn't she?
Yep.
Prosecutors later withdrew the warrants, stating then Police Chief Gideon Cody had not provided sufficient evidence to obtain them properly. Prior to the incident, journalists at the paper looked into allegations that a candy shop owner named Carrie Newell allegedly drove a car while her license was suspended for a prior DUI. You want to talk about local newspaper? Like that's what they reported. They were investigating whether or not a local candy shop owner had driven with a suspended license. Okay. The paper was subsequently accused of identity theft and unlawfully accessing a computer, leading to the confiscation of its computers, smartphones, and other equipment. After an independent investigation, special prosecutors revealed Monday plans to charge the former police chief, who resigned, with interfering in the judicial process. The special prosecutors, Sedgwick County District Attorney Mark Bennett and Riley County Attorney Barry Wilkerson, also found that neither the newspaper nor its journalists had committed any crimes before they were raided. The police chief just must have been doing a favor for this candy shop owner or something,
Yeah.
and
Dude,
raided a woman that was 100 years old and raided her house for a search warrant to get her computers and devices because she had committed identity theft because her newspaper had reported that a candy shop owner might have driven with a suspended license.
yeah, this is crazy, and oftentimes you see this type of thing in small towns where the the law enforcement has run amok, and y- I don't know why that is. I'm sure some of it's a training issue, because sometimes you go to these places and it really is podunk. There's no other way to describe it. Not an excuse, by the way, not an excuse at all for anyone in law enforcement to be behaving this way. Um, Marion County, just north of where I used to be in Wichita. You mentioned Sedgwick County. That is where Wichita is. So I wonder, and then Riley County is closer to Topeka. But I wonder if Sedgwick County and Riley County were kind of brought in as outside, the DA's offices were brought in.
Co-chairs because they probably go to court more often.
Yeah. But then I guess another doctrine, if you will, is the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. So this warrant was obtained illegally. So even if they were to find anything illegal,
A dead body with a
yeah,
knife sticking out of its chest on the floor,
it'd be
that case
thrown out.
goes away.
Yep. But man, in this case, it's even worse. This is a perfect example of weaponized government, and we've said it before. It doesn't, like, yes, coming from the FBI, for us, it seems very clear that the FBI is beyond weaponized at this point. But it's insidious, and it really goes to the heart of man again. It goes to man and their pride and their drive for control and power. And you're seeing it here in tiny Marion County. I had a case that was in the neighboring county just to the west. And when I would drive up there, it was maybe about an hour and a half. But even when I drive to Kansas City, I drive through that area. It's relatively rural. These towns are small, not a ton, not a huge population in them, in any of these towns or cities in that area. And here you have a bunch of little tyrants running the show, at least from the law enforcement angle. And to see charges, though, that does actually really kind of warm our heart. Now, we have this 98-year-old woman who's dead, which that's not cool. I mean, she probably didn't have long to go.
She wasn't buying
anyways.
green bananas, but that's a pretty traumatic experience that left her, I'm sure, with a little bit of trauma.
Oh, for sure. I mean, how would it not? Especially when you're thinking like, hey, I'm kind of running the town's newspaper. She's probably been doing it for like 50 years, I would imagine, or maybe longer in her case.
She's probably doing it for 80 years.
Yeah. And now you're having the lawman of your county come and kick your door in, essentially, and here's another thing with these small towns, and often why they're corrupt. The candy store owner, who knows, some type of relative or friend, and it's, hey, I know the police chief. So I think I said county earlier, but police chief. I know the police chief, and I'll just see if he'll do a favor for me. And the police chief probably like, hey, I've been able to do whatever I want in this town for as long as I've been in law enforcement. Ain't nobody stopping me. Ain't nobody catching me. I don't keep myself current on case law, whether it's Kansas Supreme Court case law or the federal Supreme Court. and it's just I just do what I want, and I don't care about your rights. And to see charges brought, that certainly is a win if you're going to look at it in the W and L column. I mean, it never should have happened, but at least there's charges being brought, rightfully so.
And that's why we're talking about clawing back to any semblance of normalcy. You can't bring her back to life. You can't ever do away with the fact that her Fourth Amendment rights were violated, or any of the members of that newspaper. But let's get back to some bit of normal. Throw us a freaking bone here, right? Go to Arizona Central to reports on this one, and you talk about just throw us a freaking bone here. Common sense, right? We talked about common sense speech control. How about common sense voting laws, right? Arizona Central. Supreme Court limits Arizona voters' ability to register without providing proof of citizenship. Just take a moment. You need to provide proof of citizenship to vote.
Yeah.
They tried to not make that a thing. Okay.
In Arizona, like you could get this passed, and maybe it already has passed in California, but like it's shocking that this is even a headline.
So it's not even full. It's not even complete. All right. The order upholds standard voter rights that apply to all U.S. citizens across the country, but it requires those registering to vote without proof of citizenship to complete a federal form. So you could be an illegal and just lie on the form because why? You're already an illegal, right? And we're going to get you this time because you filled out the form. In the past, voters could use both federal and state forms to register without having to provide proof of citizenship. The court rejected the Republican application to block the state's 42,000 existing federal-only voters. So those are people that have not proven that they actually live in the state, but they're barred from voting in state elections and local elections, but they can still vote in the federal elections. Wonder what sort of malfeasance could happen from that. They've not provided proof of citizenship. They can't cast a ballot in the presidential race. That's what the GOP wanted. They didn't get that. So those 42,000 people can still vote. These voters will be allowed to vote in the presidential and congressional elections, but not the state and local ones. So if you really care about state and local politics, and this is a win, clawing back a little bit, but we definitely haven't even gotten back to normal. But just throw us a freaking bone. And if you want to vote for the treasurer in your small county in Arizona, and hopefully she doesn't rip you off for $40 million, now you can vote at it by signing off on a form.
Yeah, I mean, yes, when you're trying to look at this as half
I'm
glass
trying.
full,
I'm trying half.
it's not always
half.
easy.
The glass is half. Let me just say that.
Yes, let's just stop there. It's half. You fill in the rest. But yeah, it's stunning in a way that this is even a headline. But again, to some sense of normalcy, to some sense of even like, who is it that always says, oh, it's Michael Savage. Have you ever listened to Michael Savage?
Not for a long time.
Yeah, I haven't either. But what's his thing is language borders culture, and it's here you have Arizona right on the border, and you have some guaranteed like Letitia James type person like, hey, let's try to get this legislation in where you don't have to prove that you're a citizen. I'm sure Arizona has more illegal aliens than Wisconsin just because of its proximity to the southern border. And now you're trying to, you're trying to change the culture because you've basically removed the border in a lot of ways in Arizona. And, let's just go full court press and just try to get them the ability to vote, where the Supreme Court of Arizona steps in and says, whoa, not so fast. Not so fast. We're not quite, we may be on a precipice, but we haven't tipped over it quite yet. So yeah, maybe we can claw it back, Steve. I don't know. You're making me hopeful.
That's my goal, to not puncture holes. I'm going to put some caulking in those holes of the cup that got filled up over the weekend at your baptism celebration at the church. We're coming up against the break. I do have a really good palate cleanse that I'm very excited to show you, and don't want to run out of time. You have any parting thoughts for us here, and then we can get to the palate cleanse?
I do. Where'd it go? I had it. Here it is. You mentioned the baptism. I had a couple different ones up, so I'm going with this one. Acts 2:38, and Peter said to them, speaking of good news, everybody, this perhaps is the best news. And Peter said to them, repent and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of your sins, and you will receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. That's it. That's the good news. Believe on Jesus Christ and what he's done for you on the cross. He paid the price for you. It was the Jack Daniels story. In the headline, it said Jack Daniels renounces woke agenda or whatever it is. And I thought that's kind of a strong word, renounce. I looked it up. It means formally declare one's abandonment. That's some strong language coming from Jack Daniels. But I'm going to just ask all of you listening, if you haven't already, renounce your previous self, renounce your sin nature, turn to Christ, repent, and be baptized, and you will receive the gift. That's what I have. The good news, the actual good news.
I have some more good news because over the weekend, my children have never watched the Lord of the Rings movies, and we decided to introduce them to the first one, but they've never had a cliffhanger in TV shows or movies. So that first movie is like 3 hours long, right? And my boys are 10 and soon to be 7, and they're into it, and the fighting's getting good, and then it kind of just ends, right? Like they're expecting to see like, oh, there's a resolution here, and I hadn't told them that there were 2 more movies. So I got a dad chuckle out of it. They were
Spoiler
devastated.
alert, Boromir dies and then it ends. What the
But
heck, Dad?
they're at least excited to go back and watch the second one, which will be a fun family experience. And it reminded me of this site that is on. It's a YouTube channel. It's called His He. And when I referred it to you, no, it's not pronouns. It's an acronym. And the acronym is How It Should Have Ended. And it is a funny take on lots of different movies. I would encourage you all, if you just have a couple minutes, you want to see them, they do a fantastic job. This was the first one that I ever saw, and that's what got me coming back for more. So this is the His He for what would have happened in Lord of the Rings if it had been, made sense completely.
How Lord of the Rings should have ended.
The ring must be taken deep into Mordor and cast back into the fiery chasm from whence it came. One of you must do this. I have an idea that just might work.
Sauron! Hey, Sauron! You suck! Your mother had cataracts.
Prepare yourself, Frodo! We are almost there!
Gandalf, there's fire below us!
I'll tell you when it's over! Just keep flying, blasted bird! Ready the ring, Frodo!
Ready!
Now, Frodo!
Well, that was incredibly easy.
Yes, it was!
Can you imagine what it would be like if we had walked the entire way?
Don't be so...
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? That was ridiculous. Yeah, one of us might have died.
Pause it there, Garrett.
I love it.
So
I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd at heart, so that speaks to the inner nerd.
I mean, the good news was I could have saved you like 16 hours of watching movies or probably months and months of reading, but you wouldn't have gotten all the enrichment out of J.R. Tolkien's trilogy series. So that'll do it for us today. Hope that you all enjoyed some of the good news, and we appreciate you joining us today. If you haven't already, make sure that you do smash the thumbs up and follow the program. If you want to subscribe, we appreciate it. And give us a 5-star review if you are listening to us on iTunes. We're trying to get some of those reviews in. Maybe we can start sharing them with you, but at least give us 5 stars. Help us share the program on iTunes. We're trying to grow here, guys. And we hope you have a great day. We'll be back with you on Saturday at noontime, rumble.com/amradpod. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.